Hi, I'm Coach Amber, and welcome to the Meet RX Success Story podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Jaime Seeman, and she just got through doing an excellent interview with Dr. ShawnBaker for the VIP podcast, so be sure to check that out. Welcome, Jaime.
Hi, Amber. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Jaime, tell us, what was your life like prior to starting a meat-based carnivore style diet? What was going on in your life? Why did you want to transition into a diet that is so restrictive?
Yeah. So I actually have a background in not only nutrition and exercise science, but I have a medical degree. But I myself found that after the birth of my 3 children, my health was really not in a great place. So I had been diagnosed with prediabetes and with hypothyroidism. So back in 2015, 2016, I actually kind of started really with more of just like a whole food diet. And then I transitioned into a ketogenic diet for a couple of years. Then in 2018, I decided that I was going to try the carnivore diet. And will be the first to admit, when I first kind of saw people really eating this way, I thought they were crazy. But I thought to myself, like, it kind of makes sense, right? That there's nothing that you can't get from an animal food. And so I thought, I always say be your own expert. So I thought, let's just try it for 30 days. So in like November of 2018, I decided that I was going to try straight carnivore for 30 days. And when I had already been low carb, so that transition really wasn't that difficult for me. And I'm not a huge fan of vegetables anyway. So the thought of like just eating the meat just seemed more simple to me. And so what we did was I did have 3 meals a day when I first transitioned to carnivore, and we had mostly beef. I did find the first couple weeks of transitioning to straight carnivore that I was probably under eating. I really wasn't making myself large enough portions. And I think it was just because I pictured in my mind, I would just like drop all the other things off my plate, but I wasn't increasing my portions of meat. And so the first week I found that I would lay down in bed and I was hungry, which was weird for me because I've never in my life been hungry when I went to bed. So I started to add more into my portions. I definitely had increasing electrolyte needs, dropping all of the carbs out of my diet. And I think part of that is because I train in the gym at such a high intensity that I wasn't salting my foods enough. I wasn't getting, enough sodium and potassium and magnesium. But what happened was I felt amazing. Like my tummy felt so flat. I never felt bloated. I had good energy in the gym, so I felt good from that perspective. But my brain felt really clear, and my energy just kind of like throughout the day felt really good. And it makes sense to me as a physician because now I've done so much testing that I know what my blood sugars look like when I'm very carnivore, and they're so stable. Like they're so stable and so steady. And that totally mimics like how I feel, throughout the day. And then in December, I decided, since I had just done my 30 days, that I was going to kind of add some plants and things back in. And I'll tell you, the first time I added vegetables back in, my stomach felt so horrible and so bloated. And we know that your microbiome in your gut really transitions about in 7 to 10 days. So it's pretty quickly. So like if you really take those things out of your diet for a long time and then try to add them back in, like you definitely don't feel great. Now, I don't have an autoimmune condition. I don't have anything that plants like exacerbate. I just feel best eating mostly meat. So I kind of describe my lifestyle as like carnivore-ish. Like, I mean, if I wanted to have something, like I might occasionally here or there, but like 95% of what I eat is meat-based. And it's funny how my diet has kind of transitioned over the last, almost 2 years now of eating really a meat-based diet. I think simplicity is the key to success for really most diets. But with carnivore, it's even easier for me because when I think about quote unquote like meal prepping on Sunday, all I have to prep is my protein. So on Sunday, I usually cook up about 5 to 6 pounds of ground beef because my husband and I really both eat the same way. So I usually have about 6 pounds of beef cooked up. We do chicken and salmon usually about once per week. So we usually have some chicken. I only like my salmon fresh, so I don't ever prep salmon, but I prep the beef. And one of the easiest meals for me is a ground beef bowl. So I mean, I literally just like I usually eat about 3/4 of a pound at a time. I used to eat a pound. It's a little much, but I try to eat usually 2 to 3 meals a day in like a 6 to 8 hour window. And we do a lot of ground beef bowls. We of course do tons of steak. We love steak. We do eat eggs. I don't eat breakfast usually. Usually my meals are later in the day. But it's just really been like the easiest, most simple lifestyle for us to not have to think about like prepping other foods or veggies or things. And like I said, if I have them occasionally, great, but I don't stress about it, as long as I have that fat and protein, prepared and ready.
Absolutely. And you need simplicity in your life when it comes to food. Goodness gracious, you're so busy. Y'all seriously check out the interview with Jaime because she is just doing so much. But simplicity, I think, is key, definitely. Just one question before we go on. I'm curious, because you are a physician and you probably work long hours, and it's not like you probably have a cafeteria. I don't know exactly what your situation is. What do you do as far as lunch goes? Like what do you take with you to eat? Because I'm assuming you can't prep it there.
Yeah. So I don't really have availability to cook anything fresh for lunch. So typically, but that's the greatest part too about being like keto carnivore, is that if I get stuck in the operating room or in a delivery room or whatever it is, and like I miss lunch, that's fine. And I don't feel horrible missing it. I used to be like live and die by like my next meal or snack. And so that's the greatest part about this. And sometimes if I didn't prepare or I didn't bring anything and there's not anything available that's going to make me feel good, then I may just skip that meal. But typically I just take a glass Pyrex, because I store everything in glass or stainless steel. I usually take a glass Pyrex of ground beef. And that's like literally my typical lunch. If I don't have anything prepared, or if I'm on the run, like if I do go through a fast food place, I usually just order a couple patties and maybe a couple slices of cheese. I eat really mostly beef if I'm on the run. But that's a pretty typical lunch for me. And it's, like I said, it's, for a lot of people, it sounds like really boring, but I have a microwave at my office, and I usually sit at my desk and chart while I'm eating. So it's easy. And if there's, sometimes we get lunch brought into the office. One of my favorite days is when they bring like a Qdoba or Chipotle bar in, because there's usually 3 kinds of meat. So I make like a whole just like meaty bowl with like maybe a little bit of cheese on it, and that's like the best lunch ever.
That sounds actually really good. I'm kind of getting ready for my lunch. So that sounds like really good. Yeah. And the whole boring part, people think, but did you experience where you kind of lost that whole hedonistic type eating, like where you don't like derive your pleasure from food? Not that you don't enjoy it, but that it's not this big entertainment pleasure thing.
Yeah, food used to like really control me. And I don't know that I necessarily had an eating disorder, but I definitely had, as a woman, a lot of that like mentality of like binge and restrict. Like I would eat a bunch of food and then I would just like mentally beat myself up for it. I mean, I never had like bulimic or anorexic behavior, but just like it just literally controlled me. And every single day it was like thinking about my next meal and snack. And eating this way has just like allowed me this like mental freedom. I also think that as a busy mom, like decision fatigue is like a real thing. And I would get home in the evenings and I'm like, okay, what's for dinner? And you and your husband are staring at each other like, okay, no, you have to come up with it. Okay, no, you have to come up with it. No, you're cooking it. No, I'm cooking it. And then at the end of the day, what do? You like just go pick up fast food because you're both tired and exhausted and you can't think of anything to cook, or you didn't go to the grocery store. And so now it's super easy, because if I come home and I'm like, do you want ground beef bowls or chicken? Or if like, if we set the steaks out, like, do you want ribeyes or do you want, it's just like, it's so easy. It has taken away the decision fatigue. It has really just simplified my life in so many ways. And exactly what you were touching on just allowed me the mental freedom to pursue other things in my life and not obsess over food.
Exactly. Yes. another quick question. Your 3 girls, how do they eat?
So when I first transitioned into the ketogenic diet, I didn't worry about my kids at first. I thought I have to get myself in like a good place with this. But as a mom, I feel like, right, I have this, I need to show them like how to eat. And the way that we approach it with our children is we don't tell them like, you can have this and you can't have this. For us, it's approaching it of like, this is how this food makes me feel. And this is what this food does inside my body. And we're letting them kind of learn on their own. So what we do is typically like if we're having ground beef bowls or something, my girls will make their own little bowl of ground beef, and they usually like to put, maybe a little bit of cheese or guacamole or something on their beef, which is fine. And then they might have some fruit with it. So, they might have a couple strawberries or blueberries. They'll have some other carbs on occasion, like maybe some rice or things like that, usually the full food carbs. But kids can tolerate a lot more carbs than me as like a pre-diabetic adult woman could. But we really just look kind of, and it's funny now because if you ask them, they're like, oh, how much sugar does that have in it? Or like, how many carbs does that have? And it's not pathologic by any stretch of the means. Like, it's really just, I want them to understand what they put inside their body and how it makes them feel. And I want to empower them to make decisions for themselves because at some point they're going to leave my house. And, I want them to have that education. They love eggs. They love meat. I was actually very surprised when we transitioned to carnivore. I mean, my kids like salmon. My kids, my oldest daughter who's 9 loves steak. Like if she sees me put the steaks out, she's like, oh, you got one out for me, right? Like and when she turned 9 in August and right, any kid, you're like, where do you want to go out to eat for your birthday? And she chose this prime steakhouse. We're like, okay. So we took her to the steakhouse and she ordered filet mignon and a little 6-ounce filet. And I mean, I'm proud of her. She's, like I said, I let them make decisions for themselves. And, do my kids have a piece of candy or something here and there? Yeah, that's fine. Right. But you do set an example for your children. And of course, I want them to grow up and be healthy and be strong. And just them watching me eat what I eat is, a great example.
I love that so much. I can't even tell you how much I love that. I think that's fantastic. And your girls are going to learn so much and be so much better off. But you're also giving them ability to use their own head instead of saying, you just don't eat this. I love it. That's great. Okay, so now for the really good part. And you've kind of already touched on some benefits that you've already noticed. But expand a little bit more about how eating more meat-based diet has improved your life. And what was the most shocking, surprising thing that you really weren't expecting?
Well, another thing that's really helped me being mostly carnivore is when I watch people transition to a ketogenic diet, I see that they take a lot of bad habits from their regular diet and just try to make ketogenic versions of them. And so being mostly carnivore has kind of taken that off the table for me, right? Like there's no keto treats, almond flour crackers, like da-da-da-da-da. And so I think that's why I feel so freaking good being mostly carnivore is I don't even have that kind of stuff like, as an option in my mind. But it's really, for me, building muscle, you need a lot of protein. And so it immediately has prioritized protein in my diet, which women are chronically like horrible protein eaters. And so to go more meat-based, like you don't even have to think about it. You're getting tons of protein, right? Which is good for your muscles. And so it's helped me from a strength building perspective because it's increased the protein in my diet. My skin, I used to suffer from acne, and even being ketogenic, like if I'm eating a lot of like keto treats or things, I just feel so bloated, and I typically will get like an acne breakout. So it's certainly causing like some little spike in like inflammation or a spike in my hormone levels or something. So being mostly carnivore, my skin has been amazing. My skin has really cleared up. I don't know if it was all the meat or I also added red light therapy, but my eyelashes really started to grow being carnivore. Of course, my pre-diabetes is gone. My hemoglobin A1C is 5.0. My labs all look completely normal. I'm off my thyroid medication. I don't take any thyroid medication. My periods, so TMI for the guys, plug your ears, but like as a gynecologist, my periods, I literally have no cramps, like none. Like even the first day of my cycle, like I don't feel anything. That has been absolutely amazing. Like I feel nothing at all. When I first started carnivore, though, my cycles started to shorten a little bit, and I checked my estrogen, and my estrogen had dropped a little bit. For any carnivore women out there, make sure you're eating enough food, because I've seen that before in some carnivore women, they'll lose their period. Make sure you're eating enough food and eating enough calories. And that was one of the things that I didn't do well in my first couple of months. But I just feel good physically and mentally.
I love that. Yeah, I think, so much what you said. What about digestion? Have you noticed a change in that? That was huge for me.
Yeah. And that's a common question I get. I definitely noticed like the frequency of my bowel movements slowed down, which makes sense because you're not eating all this plant matter and fibers and things like that. So just the physical like mass of fecal material is less. So I noticed it kind of spaced out, but I didn't have any issues like with constipation or anything like that. I have no issues with like my bowels or digestion. They feel better. Like I don't have any, like my tummy is so flat. Like there's just no bloat. Like my tummy just feels really good, like eating mostly meat.
That's awesome. Well, Jaime, thank you so very much for joining us and talking about your journey with the meat-based diet. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, Jaime.